The Melbourne sky was just beginning to blush, a soft, gentle pink that felt like a quiet promise. From her small studio apartment, Harmless watched the colors change, a mug of tea warming her hands. It was a familiar ritual now, this quiet greeting of the day. The city used to feel loud, a constant hum of expectation and noise, but now it felt different. It felt like her own. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the distant sound of a lone tram rattling down the tracks. She wasn't running anymore. She was just being here in this moment, breathing in the calm she had worked so hard to find. A few suburbs away, Joy was doing something similar. She sat on her balcony, a worn guitar resting in her lap, her fingers idly tracing the strings. She didn't play, not yet. She just watched the same dawn unfold, a shared sky connecting them even when they were miles apart. The chaos of their past felt like a story someone else had written about them. A whirlwind of flashing cameras, loud headlines, and a love that burned so brightly it almost consumed them both. Now, life was quieter. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of potential, full of the soft, unspoken things that mattered most. It was the sound of healing. Their lives, once tangled together so tightly they couldn't tell where one ended and the other began, had slowly, carefully, been unwound. It was a painful process, like untying a knot that had been pulled too tight for too long. But on the other side of it was this peace, this space to grow. Harmless had her paintings, canvases filled with the messy, beautiful feelings she could finally put into color. Joy had her music, melodies that were softer now, more honest, less about performance and more about truth. They were separate, but not entirely. They were two plants given their own pots, finally having enough room for their roots to breathe. This new chapter was scary, of course. Peace can feel fragile when you are used to storms. For so long, their love was defined by its intensity, its drama, its all-or-nothing energy. Learning to exist in the quiet aftermath was a challenge. It required a new kind of strength, a gentler kind of courage. It meant accepting that some things are not meant to be held on too tightly, but rather cherished from a soft, respectful distance. It was the art of letting go, not of the love itself, but of the version of it that no longer fit. The dawn was a daily reminder that every ending is also a beginning. Fame had changed for them. It was no longer a roaring beast they had to constantly feed or run from. Before, it had been a third person in their relationship, demanding, intrusive, and loud. Every argument was magnified, every quiet moment a potential headline. They had been a public spectacle, their love story consumed by thousands who felt they had a right to it. Now, the roar had faded to a whisper, a quiet echo in the background of their new lives. They were still known, of course, but the narrative had shifted. The world had, for the most part, moved on, leaving them with the space to finally define themselves on their own terms. Harmless found her voice again, not in interviews, but on canvas. Her studio was a sanctuary, filled with the scent of turpentine and oil paints. She painted with a raw honesty she had been too scared to show before. Her art was no longer about creating what people wanted to see. It was about showing what she felt. She explored themes of heartbreak, healing, and the quiet beauty of solitude. Her new collection was gaining attention, not because of who she used to date, but because it was good. It was real. People connected with the vulnerability in her brush strokes, the quiet strength in her use of light and shadow. Similarly, Joy's music had undergone a transformation. She stepped away from the big record labels and the pressure to produce chart-topping hits. She built a small studio in her home and started writing songs that felt like diary entries. The lyrics were simpler, more direct, filled with a gentle wisdom that only comes from navigating true heartbreak. Her new EP, released independently, found its audience organically. It was for the people who listened in the quiet of their rooms, the ones who understood that not all love songs are about happy endings. Some are about the peaceful, hopeful continuation. This new, quieter fame was a relief. It allowed them to be artists first and public figures second. There was a profound freedom in creating without the weight of expectation. They were no longer Harmless and Joy, the celebrity couple. They were Harmless, the painter, and Joy, the musician. Their work was a testament to their individual growth, a map of their separate journeys back to themselves. It proved that their creativity wasn't dependent on their relationship, but was an essential part of who they were as individuals. Their art was the sound of them finding their own voices again. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, Harmless sat at her desk and did something she hadn't done in over a year. She wrote a letter to Joy. It wasn't a plea to get back together or a rehash of old arguments. It was something else entirely. It was a thank you. She filled pages with her small, neat handwriting, describing how their time together, even the painful parts, had shaped the artist she was becoming. She wrote about the colors she now used, how the deep blues of their shared sadness had given way to the soft yellows of morning light. It was a letter of acknowledgement, of peace, of profound, gentle gratitude. Sending it felt like releasing a bird she had been holding in her hands. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. She didn't expect a reply, not really. The letter wasn't a question that needed an answer. It was a statement. It was her way of closing a door softly, without slamming it shut. It was an offering of peace, a final quiet word that needed to be said. For days, she felt a strange mix of anxiety and calm. It was the vulnerability of being truly seen, of laying your heart bare without any guarantee of how it will be received. But it was an act of courage she needed to take for herself. A week later, a link to a private audio file appeared in her inbox. The sender was Joy. Harmless's heart hammered against her ribs as she clicked play. A gentle acoustic guitar melody filled her studio. And then, Joy's voice, softer and clearer than she had ever heard it. The song wasn't a direct reply, but it was an answer all the same. The lyrics spoke of a storm that had passed, leaving behind fertile ground. It sang of learning to love from a distance, of seeing someone's light shine brighter now that it had its own space. It was a song of acceptance. As the final chord faded, Harmless was crying, not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief and understanding. Joy had heard her. She had truly, deeply heard her. The song was a bridge built between their two separate worlds, constructed not of shared moments, but of shared understanding. It was a conversation held across the city, through art. It was proof that their connection hadn't died. It had simply evolved into something quieter, more profound. It was a new kind of love, one that didn't require possession or proximity, but was built on a foundation of mutual respect and artistic empathy. When the offer came for a documentary about their story, their first instinct was to say no. The thought of inviting cameras back into their lives, of turning their deeply personal journey into public content, honestly felt like a step backward. They had fought so hard for their privacy, for this quiet peace. But the director was different. She wasn't interested in the drama, the headlines, or the salacious details of their breakup. She wanted to make a film about the after, about healing, artistic growth, and how love can transform into something new. She called the project Afterlight. They agreed, but with strict conditions. There would be no scripts, no reenactments, no manufactured drama. They would film separately, in their own spaces, speaking their own truths. The documentary would be a collection of moments, not a linear story. The cameras became a quiet presence in Harmless's studio, as she painted, capturing the frustration of a color not mixing right, and the quiet triumph of a finished piece. They were there as she talked, not about the breakup, but about what she learned about herself in the silence that followed. She was hesitant at first, but she spoke with a raw, unfiltered honesty. Joy's experience was similar. The film crew followed her into her small, intimate gigs at local cafes, places where the audience was there for the music, not the name. They filmed her writing, surrounded by crumpled up pages of discarded lyrics, a testament to the difficult process of finding the right words. She spoke to the camera as if it were an old friend, her voice steady and calm. She talked about fame, about pressure, and about the relief of creating art for herself again. It was vulnerable and exposing, but it also felt necessary. It felt like they were finally taking control of their own story. Participating in the documentary was an act of trust. Trust in the director, trust in the process, and most importantly, trust in each other. They knew the other was filming, sharing their side of the story, and they had to believe that they would both be gentle with their shared past. It was the ultimate test of their new dynamic. Could they tell their story, side by side but separately, with kindness and respect? It was a risk, but it was one they were willing to take. This wasn't about rehashing the pain. It was about honoring the journey. It was about showing the world that an ending doesn't have to be a failure. The night of the film festival premiere was electric. The air buzzed with anticipation. Harmless arrived alone, walking the red carpet with a quiet confidence that felt entirely new. She wore a simple black dress, her hands tucked into her pockets. She didn't pose for long, offering a small, genuine smile before slipping inside the grand old theater. She found her seat and took a deep breath, her heart a steady drum against her ribs. A few rows ahead, she saw the back of Joy's head, her familiar silhouette a comforting, if distant, sight. They hadn't planned to see each other before the screening. It felt right to let the film speak first. The lights dimmed, and the theater fell silent. The film began with the image of a Melbourne dawn, the same one they had both watched from their separate windows. For the next 90 minutes, their two stories unfolded on the screen, woven together with a delicate, respectful touch. The audience saw Harmless mixing paints, her face a mask of concentration. They saw Joy strumming her guitar, her eyes closed as she found a melody. They heard their separate voices talking about the same period of time, not with anger or blame, but with a soft, reflective nostalgia. It was beautiful and heartbreaking and, above all, honest. When the credits rolled, there was a moment of complete silence. It was a heavy, emotional quiet. Then, the applause started. It wasn't thunderous or explosive. It was warm, sustained, and full of feeling. The lights came up, and people were wiping tears from their eyes. Harmless looked across the aisle, and her eyes met Joy's. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. No words were needed. In that single, silent exchange, everything was communicated. I see you. I understand. I am proud of you. We are okay. It was a connection that transcended the noise of the crowd, a private moment in a very public space. Later, at the after party, they finally stood in the same circle of space. There were no dramatic embraces or tearful reunions. It was simpler than that. A soft smile. "You were brilliant," Harmless said quietly. "So were you," Joy replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You got the colors just right." They stood together for a few moments, the space between them comfortable, no longer filled with tension or unspoken pain. The crowd swirled around them, but they were in their own quiet bubble. They had survived the storm and had come out the other side, not as a couple, but as two whole individuals who would always share a significant, beautiful piece of history. A week after the premiere, a package arrived for Joy. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a small square canvas. It was a painting from Harmless. It depicted the Melbourne skyline at dawn, the same scene that had opened the film, but this one was different. It was softer, more abstract. The colors were muted, gentle pinks, soft lavenders, and a peaceful hazy blue. There was no note, but none was needed. The painting was the final word, the period at the end of a long, complicated sentence. It wasn't a memory of their past. It was a portrait of their present. It was a painting of peace. Joy hung the canvas on the wall opposite her bed, so it was the first thing she saw every morning. It was a reminder, a symbol. It represented the calm after the storm, the quiet beauty of a new day. Their love story hadn't ended. It had simply changed form. It had transformed from a blazing, consuming fire into a gentle, steady warmth, like the first rays of morning sun. It was less about contact and more about connection, a deep, unspoken understanding that flowed between their art, their music, and their shared sky. The painting was proof that they had found their way to the afterlight. She picked up her guitar, the morning light from her window falling across the new painting. Looking at the soft colors, she thought about how their relationship used to be vibrant, chaotic reds, and intense, stormy blues. Now it was this gentle palette. Peace was their new color, and it was beautiful. It was a beauty that was quieter, more mature, and perhaps even more profound than the passionate intensity that had come before. It was a love that had been refined by distance and time, stripped down to its most essential, honest form, a deep, abiding care. As she began to play, a voiceover, poetic and soft, seems to fill the space, her final words in the documentary echoing her thoughts. Some people think love is a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a color, and it changes over time. We were a burning, bright red for a while, and it was beautiful. But now we're a soft blue. The color of the sky just before the sun comes up. It's not an ending. It's just dawn.